Girlfriends, episode number 387, How to Thrive When Life Changes. Hello and welcome to Girlfriends. I'm Danielle Bean. I'm a wife and a mom, and I'm on a mission to help you know your worth as a woman so you can find peace, balance, and joy in family living. This week, we're talking about big changes in life and how you can thrive instead of just survive. This is an important topic, and I can't wait to get started. Hey, girlfriend. So glad you are joining me here on this all new episode of the Girlfriends podcast. New this week, Girlfriends is going to be launching on YouTube. So if you're joining me on YouTube, thrilled to see you here. If you haven't checked out Girlfriends on YouTube, you can go over to the Good Catholic channel on YouTube. You can get all the information over at goodcatholic.com. We will have the link in the show notes, of course, for every episode of the Girlfriends podcast over at goodcatholic.com. So you can watch Girlfriends instead of just listening. And it's an exciting new project we're working on. Good things to come there. So thrilled to be making this new step with the Girlfriends podcast. Okay, so today we're going to be talking about how to thrive when life changes. I'm thinking about this because we've just been through this season and we're still in it, many of us, this kind of back to school season. I used to call it the goodbye season. I still call it the goodbye season, especially once I had kids who were grown and going away to college. It just kind of became the goodbye season to me. And I became aware of the fact that so many people are going through a lot of emotional stuff this time of year, where people are making big changes in their lives. People are saying goodbye to big kids going away to school or starting jobs or joining the military or starting kindergarten for the first time. You know, this is a time of change, and that can be difficult. I can really feel it in the air every year around this time that life is hard for people. People are going through big changes, and often changes for the good, but that still can be a difficult thing to process, especially for us as parents, as we watch our kids kind of go through these milestones, as we move through different stages of family life. As beautiful as that can be, it is sometimes challenging for us to kind of get our bearings in a new stage of life. So I want to talk about that a little bit. So years ago, when my first son went away to college, my oldest daughter commuted to college, so we kind of got a pass at first. But when my oldest son went away to college, I just didn't even know how to handle those feelings. And I remember going like online and looking for like resources, people who might be sharing about kind of making that transition as a mom. And I found so little. There really wasn't a lot out there for that stage of life, at least from a Catholic perspective. So that kind of prompted me back then to think about writing my own book. And I did, kind of talking about the stages of family life, the different transitions that we go through, and reflecting back on the gift of family life and the things we're saying goodbye to. So ultimately, that book is Giving Thanks and Letting Go, Reflections on the Gift of Motherhood, which is available from Ave Maria Press. And, you know, that was a great project for me to work on. Part of what I was doing when I was writing that book was I was revisiting themes from my very first book ever, way back in 2005, I believe it was that published, was with Pauline Books and Media. And it was called My Cup of Tea. And it was just this collection of essays that I had written about faith and family life, really. And I had recently looked at that book and I read it through and I was like, gosh, like, am I even the same person? You know, in a lot of ways, yeah, we were the same family, but we really weren't. Like, we were different. And I was the same person, but I really wasn't. Like, things have changed. And that experience of going back and reading that book really made me want to share from an updated perspective, like what's going on in my faith and family life right now. What does this stage of parenting look like? And so that really prompted me to write that book, Giving Thanks and Letting Go. But really, this entire stage of life that I'm experiencing right now, where we've got young adult kids, half of our kids are married, and 2 of them are away at school most of the year. We've just got 2 that are home full-time year round. Kind of adjusting to this, I've realized that theme of giving thanks and letting go has really been just like a key mantra for me during this stage of family life. And I find it's a really useful one. So even if you don't have big kids who are growing up and leaving right now, you might be going through a difficult change in your life. And by difficult, I don't necessarily even mean a sad one. Sometimes change for the good, whether you're like moving to a new house or you're changing jobs or having a baby, like these changes, as wonderful as they are still also stressful and they can be hard to navigate. So I want to talk about that. What are some things that can kind of help us to thrive when we're going through a big change, when life changes in a big way? So I want to share, let me see, I've got five things that I want to share with you about what might be able to help you to do that. And the first one is let yourself feel. Okay. Now I know my kids don't listen to this podcast, so thank goodness, because they always make fun of me. Like my oldest son, especially, is always rolling his eyes like, feel your feelings, but so important to feel your feelings. You have to know how you're feeling. You have to process what you're feeling. You have to think it through, not avoid it, not get lost and distracted in busyness and occupations, and not allow yourself to understand what you're feeling, and without judgment. I think that's really important. Part of what I was doing when I was kind of, first having kids leave for school, go away to college, and figuring out like, what does that mean for me? And how does this feel? Like I'm devastated in a lot of ways. And part of the healing process for me and part of the adjustment has truly come from being honest and talking through how I'm feeling, thinking about how I'm feeling. And so, you might want to talk it through with your husband, with, your mom, with a good girlfriend. There might be somebody like that in your life that you want to be sharing it with. But even if you don't want to talk it through with somebody, exhaustively talk it through with somebody, maybe you want to journal, maybe you want to write out your feelings. Just think it's really important to be aware of how you're feeling and all of those different little parts of how you're feeling. And, not that you want to get stuck there, especially if you're feeling negatively, if you're sad, if you're feeling lost, if you're feeling lonely, or if you're, having a lot of difficulty with whatever change life is throwing at you right now. Don't get stuck there, right? The point of feeling your feelings isn't to just wallow in negativity and get stuck there. The point is to assess where you are, how you're feeling, and without judgment. I think it's really important to say without judgment, because when my book, Giving Thanks and Letting Go, first came out, I heard from lots of women who were struggling with that very same stage of family life. Like, how do I handle this? I'm devastated that my kids are leaving. But I remember this one mom reached out to me and said, I don't know what's wrong with me, but I'm actually doing great. Like, I love this stage of life. I love the fact that I have more freedom. I love having more time alone with my husband. So she was like, I feel guilty that I'm not struggling with this. Like I'm hearing about so many other women struggling. And I was like, that is totally okay, right? No matter how you're feeling, it's totally okay. Just allow yourself to feel what you're feeling and be honest about it. And, I think having a good girlfriend is really helpful for this. This is what we women do. Like we talk through things, right? Sometimes we just need to talk to figure out even how we're feeling. And, guys don't get this, and that's fine. They don't serve this role in our lives, right? You need a good girlfriend that you can talk things through with. I've observed this in my conversations with friends of mine, also my sisters, that there's almost like a cyclic way that we have of speaking with each other when we're going through something difficult. Like if, I don't know if you've noticed this, but you might have a conversation with somebody about like, these feelings you're having, this difficult situation you're facing, and you can just talk it all through, talk about how you're feeling, and then just kind of start back in, like even repeating yourself in a lot of ways. Like you just need to get that out and express it. And it's so helpful to have somebody that you can do that with. So maybe you have somebody who's going through a similar change. Maybe you have somebody in your life who's gone through a similar change. I mean, what a gift our veteran moms are who go before us in these various ways. And, maybe you're facing something that's a small change, but still hard for you. When I was talking about this goodbye season, I realized there's a lot of ways that we moms say goodbye all through our lives, right? It's like that we say goodbye the minute our children are born, right? Because they begin growing and developing new skills and growing in independence, growing away from us. And so it's like a series of goodbyes, giving thanks and letting go, a series of having to do that, having to remind ourselves to give thanks and let go. And it doesn't always feel good. So the kind of change you might be going through is maybe you put your child on the school bus for the first time this year. It's not an easy thing. I remember years ago, so we homeschooled, and when my oldest daughter was a junior in high school, I figured she should probably take a class like in a classroom before she finishes up her high school. And so I enrolled her, as we can do here in New Hampshire. I just enrolled her in one course, an English class in the local public high school. And I remember driving her to the school that day and dropping her off. And, here she is, like this 16-year-old girl, very capable. And she just like went into the school, and I sat in the parking lot and just burst into tears. And it was so funny because I was surprised by my response in that way, but it was real. Like I really felt this like letting go, this loss. And I remember at the time kind of laughing at myself, like, these are the tears that a lot of moms cried when their babies went to kindergarten, right? Like I just got to delay it by like 16 years because we happen to be homeschoolers. But whatever change it is that you're facing in your life, I know of one family here that is has been homeschooling for years, and they're beginning at a new school this year. They're sending their kids to school for the first time. That's a big change. Life is about big changes, and sometimes we choose them and sometimes we don't. But either way, allowing yourself to really just feel what you're feeling and kind of process that is so truly important to thriving in a season of change. All right, so that's the first one. Feel your feelings. Let yourself feel. All right, then give yourself grace. This is the second one. Give yourself grace. Now, I think this is such a motherly phrase, right? I say it to my friends. I say it to people that I know that are going through a hard time. Like, we need to be reminded to give ourselves grace sometimes, because we'll give grace to everybody else, meaning that we'll accommodate them. We will make their lives more comfortable if they're going through something hard. I want to encourage you, if you're going through something hard, if you're going through a big change in your life, just give yourself grace in that time that you're going through that change. Don't be judging yourself for how you feel or for the thing that you didn't get accomplished or holding yourself to a high standard. Like, this isn't the time in your life to really be challenging yourself in some way. It's a time in your life to be gentle with yourself, to maybe build some margins into your daily calendar, your schedule, so that you have more time for downtime, more time for prayer, more time for connecting with the people that you love. Give yourself grace. And, part of that means not holding yourself to the same standards that you might hold yourself to, the other times of the year. If you're going through something hard, then, maybe whatever your family meal times usually look like, or your workout routine, you might need to just soften that a little bit. It's okay. It's allowing yourself that space to experience what you're going through, process it appropriately, and just come through the other side feeling whole. Give yourself that time to really process that change, because just talking about your feelings or thinking about your feelings and being clear about what you're feeling is an important part of the process. But the other part just comes with time, allowing yourself that space to adjust. So give yourself that grace. I can link to this episode in the show notes, but a long time ago when gosh, how long ago was it that we dropped off our son Ambrose at Ave Maria down in Florida? I don't know. So he is turning 25 this week. So yeah, it's that long ago. So that time is so funny because I just remember this story, and I think I shared it in this episode that I did at the time, where I think I shared this story of dropping off Ambrose down in Florida, so that, we live in New Hampshire. So that's like, 1,500 miles away. And we planned this whole trip, this family trip, around this event of bringing him down to school. And, we had gone through this before. As I mentioned, my older son had gone away to school, but it was right nearby. And so that was one change. But then this was an even bigger change, right? And I didn't really give myself grace. I didn't give myself the time to even feel what I was feeling and give myself space in that time, because we planned this whole trip around it. We dropped him off at school, and it was busy, busy, busy. As during times of change, often you are very busy. There's a lot of stuff to do. So, we get him moved into his dorm. We make the big trip to Walmart. We're doing all of these things. And then we left him at school. And then we drove down into Key West, and, we're having this family trip. And I remember one of those nights, I just got in this small argument with my husband. I don't even remember what it was about. And it turned into this horrible, crying mess. I was just inconsolable. And I remember even at the time thinking, what is wrong with me? Like, why am I overreacting on this level? And of course, it wasn't about the argument with my husband at all, right? It was about having let go, having said goodbye to our son Ambrose and all of the feelings there, but I wasn't allowing myself to even think about them. And I certainly wasn't giving myself grace in that moment. So I can see that so clearly now. And I did share that story and a few more ideas along the lines of this theme of giving thanks and letting go in that episode. I'll link to it. I think it was called The Art of Saying Goodbye. So I'll link to that in this episode as well. But I think it's important to not only be honest about how you're feeling, but then be clear with yourself about how you're feeling, but also with the people around you. Because part of giving yourself grace is allowing other people to give you grace, and it can be as simple as not waiting until you have a big freak out moment and are sobbing, crying, and your whole family is like, what is wrong with her? Wait, don't wait until that moment. Instead, address it ahead of time. Address it in the moment that you're feeling it. Allow yourself that and, ask for the space that you need. Ask for the time that you need. You could explain to your kids or to your husband or to someone that you're working with, like, I'm going through this right now. And, and you don't have to share details. It isn't necessarily appropriate to share details with everybody, but you could let them know, like, that you're going through something and, you're just going to need a little more time. Perfectly appropriate to ask for that. That's part of how you can give yourself grace, is to ask for space, ask for grace from other people during that time that you're going through a difficult challenge. All right. The third thing that I want to mention with regard to this idea of going through a big change is focus on what's good. What's good? Maybe you're thinking, this isn't a change I wanted. Nothing's good. Well, I promise you there's something good. Something good is coming out of this change. For sure, in this change that I'm talking about during this time of year where many of us are saying goodbye to kids going away to school for the first time or for the 1,000th time, it feels that way. Our son, Stephen, and our daughter, Gabby, went back to school. They're down at Ave Maria as well. And they left at the end of the summer, and it still was sad. It still was hard. I do feel like I'm getting a little bit, I wouldn't say better at it. I would say I'm more used to it because, each kid is its own kind of letting go. And so there's that kind of bittersweet feeling. But if you allow yourself to see it, you will see that there's good in your situation. There's good in it. For sure, it's an easy thing to see with, like, if you're saying goodbye to a young adult kid who's getting married or going away to school or starting their first job or getting their first apartment, that it's easy to see there for sure that they're gaining some independence. This is how it's meant to be, right? Because what's the alternative? Like, they live in your basement and they never leave home. Well, that kind of would be sad, right? That isn't the goal. Our goal as parents, like from the minute they're born, like I said, is to be helping our kids to gain independence. This was the goal. Like, you succeeded. Allow yourself to experience that. Allow yourself to enjoy the fact that your children are becoming the people that God means for them to be. They're going out in the world. They're trying new things. They're meeting new people. I have loved this stage of my parenting that I never anticipated before. Like, when my kids were little, and I hear from moms that are there right now, they're like, their kids are little and they're already dreading the fact that they're going to grow up and leave home. I get it. I mean, that was me. I remember being like, no, you're never going to leave home. You're never going to move out. You're never going to get married. Right. But, think about the fact that that's the goal from early on. You're supposed to be working yourself out of a job. Right. And that it would be sad if your kids didn't become fully the people that God means for them to be. And, the other thing is that they're not sad about it as much as that stings, right? I mean, in some ways, right? It's like bittersweet, right? But I think back to when I went away to school, I wasn't sad about it. I mean, in some ways it felt like a change and it took some time of adjustment. Sometimes I was homesick, but mostly I was just thrilled to be doing my own thing, right? I had plans, I had goals in life, and I was going out to get them. And that's really appropriate. And I said that to my husband, Dan, when Gabby and Stephen left this at the end of this summer. We were both kind of having a rough day, like, oh, it's kind of sad and quiet around here. And yet I reminded him, like, you know what? They are happy. They're happy where they are. They've got good friends, it's a beautiful thing that they're doing. We're very happy for them in what they're doing. And they are happy. They're not, moping around like this is some tragic situation. So that's part of the good that can come out of your situation. But if the kind of change you're going through is more of, facing a loss in your life, or it's not a change that you would have chosen, it's something very difficult for you, you may need to try even harder to see some of the good. But God always brings about good. God always works things together for our good. And he wants to do that for you in whatever you're facing right now, whatever kind of change you're going through right now. He wants that for you. So, ask God, where's the good if you're having trouble seeing it? But I think for most of us, no matter what we're facing, we can find good that's coming out of it. Maybe it's good that you're experiencing in a relationship with somebody as a result of going through a difficult change. Maybe it's good that you see growing in yourself, a growing understanding of the trust that we're meant to have in God, of turning things over to God. And this is part of why I like that mantra, giving thanks and letting go, because ultimately that's all we need to do. And this is actually my fourth point. Remember the giving thanks part, because all of us absolutely have room to grow in gratitude. Like, we have so many gifts that are given to us, so many blessings in our lives that we can easily take for granted. But God wants us to be grateful. He wants us to know that all good things come from him. He wants us to be turning to him for everything that we need. And this is why I like that phrase, giving thanks and letting go, because it certainly applies to a time of change, a time of loss, a time of transition in life. We're called to give thanks for the good thing we had. And sometimes that's the hardest thing, right? Because as our kids grow up, it's important to realize that it is a loss. We don't live in heaven yet. This is not paradise. So we experience loss and pain and suffering in this world. And that's part of it. It's imperfect. That beautiful little baby, that little toddler, that little 7-year-old was a beautiful gift that you had in your life. And they're no longer here. That person is still here, and that person is still a gift in your life, but it's not the same thing. So experiencing that as a loss is real. It's okay to admit that that's a loss and to allow yourself to grieve that loss. But don't get stuck there. Focus on the giving thanks part, giving thanks for the beautiful gift that you experienced in that relationship, or maybe your work situation has changed and you're struggling with that change. Give thanks for the opportunity that you had. Give thanks for the ways that you grew in that relationship, or in that work opportunity, or, in that family situation. Give thanks. And then the other part is letting go, the giving thanks and letting go. I realized this not too long ago as I was as I was praying one morning, I was thinking about that phrase of giving thanks and letting go. And I was bringing my petitions to God, bringing before the Lord, a particular friendship that I had this conflict in and I was worried about. And it occurred to me, I need to give thanks for this person in my life and let go. Give this person over to God. Give this relationship over to God. And that's what we're meant to do with every part of our lives. Are you worried about your finances? Give thanks for what you have and let it go. Give it back to God. Allow him to take care of you. This is why, we've talked so much about the surrender novena here. I love that prayer. And it's so simple, right? That we trust in Jesus. I surrender myself to you. Take care of everything. That's all Jesus wants us to pray. That's what God wants. If we can figure out how to do that, well, we don't need to figure out anything else. Give thanks and let go. Trust in the goodness of God. Give thanks for your child as he's going away to school for the first time. Give thanks for the gift of that child and let go. Giving thanks and letting go. It's really a beautiful prayer practice. Whatever it is you're bringing to God, do that. Give thanks and let it go. It truly can help you have the proper perspective on it, but also bring God into that equation. Bring God into that time of transition in your life where you might be struggling. It might be really joyful in a lot of ways, but you're feeling kind of lost in some other ways. So use that. Bring that to your prayer time. Give thanks and let go. All right. The last point that I want to make about how to thrive in a time when life changes in a big way is to, first of all, pray, right? But specifically, pray these words: what now? Ask God where he wants you to go now, what he wants you to do now. Like if you're going through a time of change, then something is different, but the something different comes with opportunities. I can promise you that. So if you've got a child that's going away to school and that's a difficult transition for you, maybe you have many children, maybe your last child has gone away to school and you're wondering, what am I going to do now? Who even am I, right? So many of us throw ourselves wholeheartedly into our motherhood and our identity exists there. And then it can be a really difficult thing when your kids no longer need you in the same way. Some of us experience that when our kids are even, just like middle grades, they're more independent. They don't need us there every minute. They don't need us to tie their shoes and cut the crusts off their sandwiches anymore. They need us in different ways. But that opens up opportunities for other things in our lives. That is what we need to bring to prayer. We need to ask God, what now? What are you calling me to do next? For every woman, that is going to be some form of motherhood. So like St. John Paul II so beautifully reminds us that every woman's vocation is to motherhood. Now, of course, that doesn't mean every single woman is going to physically bear children, right? That's not true. But what it does mean is every woman is called, and this is the distinction I like to make, to mother, a verb, right? This is what we do. We mother. And what does that mean? Well, that's going to look different for every one of us. The details of that are going to be different for every one of us. But what is the same is that we're using our feminine gift of generosity, compassion, sensitivity, our unique capacity as women to love other people where they are, to see them where they are, make them feel uniquely seen and known and loved. We have a special gift for doing that in our lives. And for sure, those of us who are raising children, we're called to do that in a special way in their lives. But beyond that, we're called to do that in the lives of every person we ever meet. We're called to love the people that God places in our lives. So who are those people for you? What now? Bring that to prayer, but ask yourself the same question. What now? What opportunities are available to me right now? You might have more time, more energy, more opportunities for daily prayer, for focusing on your marriage, for maybe new work opportunities, maybe volunteer opportunities. There are people in your life who need your mothering. Ask God who they are. Ask him to show you how he wants you to use your gifts to love and serve others in your life right now. I promise you, he will love to answer that prayer and open your eyes to the ways that he is calling you to love and serve the people that he's placed in your life. It might be through, your coworkers. There might be people in a work situation that you are going to love in the way that God is calling you to. It might be just going deeper and nurturing your own marriage. So many of us during the crazy, growing up years of our kids, our marriages can kind of get lost in that. They can kind of be pushed aside and we don't have the time to really nurture our relationships with our spouse in that time. So now might be an opportunity for you to do that. Now might be an opportunity for you to grow in relationship with your own parents, maybe caring for your parents as they're aging, or maybe volunteering in some capacity in your community, in your parish, maybe with your friendships. God is calling you to love and serve the people in your life. And that doesn't go away. That call doesn't go away. The way that we answer that call and the unique details about who needs our love changes throughout our lives. Sometimes in difficult ways, sometimes in ways we wouldn't choose, but sometimes in natural ways that we can celebrate. But also it feels a little hard. It can be a little difficult to make that transition. But bring that prayer to God. What now? Where are you calling me now? That beautiful scripture, here I am, Lord. Ask God what he is calling you to next. So I promise you, he has a plan for you. And for those of us who are moms, it can be easy to think like, well, his plan for me was my motherhood and that's largely over now, and feel kind of despondent in that. But that's not what God wants for you. He has an ongoing call for you to grow in holiness, for you to answer his call to love and serve the people in your life. That doesn't go away. And that part is not changing. So we need to be open to it. Bring that to prayer if you aren't sure exactly what that's going to look like for you right now. but be open to what God might be calling you to next. All right, those are my 5 points. So just to recap here, first of all, feel your feelings. Let yourself feel what you're feeling. Write it all out, talk it out, be clear about it. You need to process that. Second of all, give yourself grace. That might mean building in some margins in your calendar, being gentle with yourself. Then focus on the good. I promise you, there is good. Find it, focus on it, and then give thanks. Ultimately, that's what we need to be doing, giving thanks for the good things that God has given us in our lives. And then that process of letting go. And then finally, bring it all to prayer. Bring all of your feelings and your thoughts and your worries and your anxieties to prayer, but then don't forget to pray those words. What now? What next? Where is God calling you to next? You might have some ideas of your own for what you find helpful for when you're going through a time of transition in life, when you go through a big change. Maybe you want to share a story from your own experience of bringing a kid away to college, or maybe you've done that for the first time or for the 10th time this year. I would love to hear your experiences and especially share them on a future episode of Girlfriend. So you can email me, Danielle@daniellebean.com. If you are watching this on YouTube, guess what? You can comment right there. It's super easy to do. But also you can send me a Vox. If you use the app Voxer, it's a fun way to kind of send voice messages to each other. I would love to be able to add your voice to a future episode of Girlfriend. So the way you can connect with me on Voxer is through the link that is available in the show notes for the Girlfriends podcast. They're always available over at goodcatholic.com. All right, we've got more of the show coming up, but we're going to take a quick break. I'm Danielle Bean, and you're listening to the Girlfriends podcast.
Maintaining your peace and getting involved in politics is possible. I invite you to join me on September 6th from 8 to 9:30 p.m. as I, Brendan Gatta, will go live with Father Dwight Longnecker, esteemed author and speaker, as he shares wisdom on engaging in politics while preserving well-being and relationships. Registration is $14.95, and through this event, you'll be able to navigate the political landscape with grace. Don't miss out. Visit goodcatholic.com for details and registration.
Okay, now we're at the point in the show where I like to share some listener feedback or a question from a listener. It's really a nice way to kind of make this more of a back and forth. I love getting questions from you. I love hearing your feedback on the episode of Girlfriends. So this week I heard from Megan, and Megan shared that she's kind of going through a struggle at her Catholic church where she doesn't really feel like she belongs and she feels like an outsider there. She's feeling a little bit adrift. And so I won't share the entirety of her email, but just this part. She says, I know the easiest answer is to find another Catholic church, but I'm almost tempted to leave the church at this point because it feels like such an empty void. My husband is a cradle Catholic, and even he doesn't want to go to church now either because it's boring, dare I say. I have all other friends going to other churches who love it, and I am just feeling like I just don't. Do you have any guidance for me on this? I want to be a proud Catholic, and I just feel like I'm an imposter. I'm afraid if I try another parish that's about 30 minutes away, that I'll get nothing out of that too. I'm just feeling blue and sad. I just listened to your episode about that specifically to help with how I'm feeling. And I just hate feeling this spiritual void. I do daily devotions and pray daily, eat very clean, work out 2 times a day, etc. But I'm feeling adrift even more now than ever. Thanks again for your time, and I'm really enjoying your podcast. I hope to hear back from you soon, Megan. All right. Megan, I'm so sorry that you are feeling that right now. And I understand the temptation to feel like you want to walk away from it and kind of just feel like maybe it's not worth it. And it sounds like, you and your husband are kind of in that place together. But I really want to encourage you. First of all, I don't know, this whole episode has been about going through a time of life transition. Sounds like maybe that might be going on in your life. I don't know. You don't share a lot of those other details about other things in your life, but sometimes we can find ourselves feeling adrift when things change around us and we can feel disconnected. So there might be something like that that's going on with you. But I do want, it's important to rule out that you have any kind of a medical issue like actual, clinical depression or something like that going on, because feeling adrift and disconnected in an ongoing way in your life is not okay. That's definitely something you need to address. But if this is just specifically about this particular parish community and just not feeling like you connect there, I want to encourage you, first of all, to pray about it. Sometimes when we feel like we don't have the friendships or the community that we need, the last thing we think of doing is bringing it to prayer. But that's a need that God cares about greatly. He cares a lot about the fact that you have that need in your life. So bring it to prayer. Ask God, what holy friendships do you want me to have? Where are you calling us as a family to find community? Because you're not meant to go it alone. It's so hard. Who would do that? It's so difficult, right? You need to have other people that are with you on this journey. You need to know that you're not alone in it, that other people are like-minded and they share your faith and your values. And, just have that connection with other people. So pray about that. Bring that to prayer. And then I want to encourage you, and this part might be uncomfortable, to reach out to other people. It might be in that faith community that you describe, but that might not be the place for you. It might be that you kind of look around a little bit to find other people who might share your faith or your values that are closer to you in your community or involved in your parish in some way, but not necessarily like signing up for a parish program. Reach out to people, kind of get outside your comfort zone, because ultimately, if you want to have a good friendship, then one of the most important things that you can do is be a friend to somebody else. That's what they're looking for too, right? Other people are looking for those kinds of meaningful friendships and connections with other people. And so you're not alone in that seeking. But if everybody is just waiting for everybody else to come up and talk to them, then nothing's going to happen. Somebody's got to be a little bit vulnerable and reach out in that way, maybe stepping outside of your comfort zone. So I want to encourage you to do that, but bring it to prayer for sure, because God will open up areas in your life for the kinds of things that you need. Every thing that we desire, every good thing that we are wanting in our lives, and for sure, longing for a sense of belonging and community, that is a core need that we have as human beings. Like every one of those desires, God has placed in your heart. He knows about it. He cares about it. He wants to meet that need. So go to him in your need. Bring that to your prayer life. Make it an ongoing prayer of yours, and then be open to some of the ways that he might be calling on you to step outside your comfort zone and kind of be that friend to somebody else, make that connection. Years ago, I was feeling kind of that way about our parish community, and I really felt called to begin a program in our parish, which was like a women's study, like a Bible study group just for women. And it was very small, but it was something that I wasn't inclined to do, before that. Like, I just kind of like, I wish somebody would have that kind of program so I could go to it and meet people. And ultimately, it really ended up being a great gift to me. The fact that I did that, I did it for COVID killed it and it hasn't come back. That's the story of so many things. And yet it was a really great learning experience for me that sometimes rather than waiting around for somebody to invite us to something, we need to invite somebody to something. Rather than waiting around for this, program to start or a book study or whatever, we need to start the thing. So I want to encourage you to think a little bit like that. I want to challenge you to think a little bit about that and bring that to your prayer. Ask God where he's calling you to kind of grow in that way. And know that I'm going to be keeping you in prayer, Megan, in this coming week in a special way. And I want to encourage everybody listening to lift up Megan in prayer and her family, that they will find the Catholic community where God wants them to be, to grow and to thrive. Okay, if you have a question for me, I want to hear it from you. Let me know what's on your mind. If you have feedback for this episode or any other episode, if you have a topic you'd like me to take up, or if you have a question you want me to take up in this part of the podcast here, I would love to hear from you. You can always email me, Danielle@daniellebean.com, or connect with me over at goodcatholic.com. All right, that's all the time we have for today, but I want to thank you for being here. Thank you for being a part of this episode of the Girlfriends Podcast. You are an important part of the Girlfriends community just because you are here. And if you're joining us over on YouTube, I want to encourage you to subscribe. So like, comment, and subscribe. I would love to be able to interact with you right here in this new space. And until next time, I hope you enjoy your day and God bless your week.